Okay, the meeting of the Public Safety Committee is now called to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Bosley.
Present.
Alderman French.
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderman Cone.
Present.
Alderman Carter. Alderman Coulter.
Here.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Here.
Alderwoman Green.
Here.
Chairman Kennedy.
Here.
8 present, you have a quorum.
Okay, we have several bills in front of us, well, 2 of them. We will take up Board Bill number 80. Alderwoman Cruzen is here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Public Safety Committee. Board Bill 80 is a board bill which extends the prohibition on 3 a.m. licenses, liquor licenses in the 28th Ward for another 3 years.
That's it, right?
That's really it. There are, just by way of background, there are already some 3 a.m. licenses in the 28th Ward, 6 as a matter of fact. They've all had those licenses for quite a long time. There's no issue with them, and this won't affect them. But the reason that I think this is good for the 28th Ward is that, like most of our neighborhoods, the 28th Ward, the commercial district and the residential district, they're just really intertwined. And so I think 3 a.m. licenses are very tough if you've got neighbors right next door. And so there, about 3 years ago, when this was first put in place, there were sort of a spat of, or spate, whichever that word is, of folks thinking that they wanted 3 a.m. liquor licenses. And there was a lot of opposition to it, and you know, they weren't successful. But it just seems to me and to the residents of the 28th Ward that more 3 a.m. liquor licenses doesn't usually work very well.
Okay.
So.
Questions from members of the committee? Alderman Bosley.
Yeah, have you been experiencing any problems because on Salisbury, we getting ready to get a real entertainment district going down there, and if I knew up front what problems you were having with that, the first time one of them shows up, I'd know what it was. So what problems have you been experiencing that would require it?
You know, I don't think 3 a.m.s in and of themselves are necessarily bad. It really depends on where they're located. In the 28th Ward, for example, I'll tell you where the ones are. The Chase has one. Well, that's fine. Stay up all night if you want and you're at the Chase because you're not bothering anybody. Believe it or not, the Probstein Golf Clubhouse has one. They need one because not because they stay up till 3 in the morning, but because if they're doing tournaments, golf tournaments that start at 7 or 8 on Sunday, they have to have a 3 a.m. license in order to serve alcohol early in the morning. The Moonrise Hotel has one. The Pageant has one. And the Pinup Bowl has one. Those are all on the north side of Del Mar with no residents anywhere nearby. And then the Par Bar has one, and that's it's next to the High Point Theater, if you know where that is, at Clayton. And that one can be a little bit of an issue because you do have a lot of residents who are living right behind there. And I have no problem if you want to stay up and drink till 3 in the morning, and if I could do it anymore, I'd still be doing it. But since I have to get up at 6:30, I don't want to live next door to it. So that's it. It's really a matter of where are they located. And, you know, 3 a.m. Licenses appeal to the trade, meaning folks who work in bars and restaurants, they get off work at midnight or whatever. They may still want to go out. Their schedule is, running a little later. So I don't have any problem with that. I just think that where they're located is really key to the balance that we all need to exist in our neighborhoods between businesses and residents. So,
Had you experienced any problems before by not having a 3 a.m. liquor license?
no, I tell you what, you can, the county, for example, they don't even allow 3 a.m.s. So the city is the only nearby area that allows 3 a.m. licenses. So I think there are places where they're good to have them, but then there are places where they can be pretty disruptive to residents.
The reason I asked that, if we knew in advance, then we'd be able to head it off before even coming to do an ordinance in
Right.
any of the other 28 wards, by knowing what to look for in advance when it begins to rear its head.
Well, you know, what you look for are the problems that you sometimes have with 1 o'clock licenses, you just have 2 hours later, which is people who are overserved, who are leaving late, who are not even doing anything wrong, they're just leaving and they're loud, and they're saying to their friend, hey, great to be with you tonight, that was so much fun, we got to do it more often, except when they're doing that at 3 a.m. and you're trying to sleep. You know, it's just about balance. So it's about noise, it's about what time they take trash out. When you give your newest employee the job at a restaurant or bar, their job is to take the trash out, right? The boss doesn't take the trash out, the newest guy does. What does he do? He takes cans and bottles to an empty metal dumpster, and he dumps them all in there, and it's clang, 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 and then the dumpster lid slams. That's fine if you're not living next door to it, but that's tough if you're doing that at 3 in the morning. So I just think it's good for the 28th Ward not to have more 3 a.m. licenses. And this is another 3 years of the moratorium on it. It's not forever. You know, we'll think about it again in 3 years. So.
I don't have no
Now, that's
problem
pretty
with this in the
prescribed.
28th ward. I don't have a problem yet.
Right.
That completes your, okay. Alderman French,
No questions.
Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Cone.
No questions.
Carter's not here. Alderman Coulter.
No questions.
Alderman Spencer.
No questions.
Alderwoman Green.
No questions.
Okay. Any closing remarks?
No, I'd appreciate your support.
With that, we could entertain a motion.
I move that we pass Board Bill 80 out with a due pass recommendation.
Been moved and seconded that we pass Board Bill 80 out with a due pass recommendation. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Bosley.
Aye.
Alderman French.
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderman Carter. Alderman Coulter.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Green.
Aye.
Chairman Kennedy.
Aye.
8 aye votes do pass.
By your vote, we've adopted, Board Bill 80 with a due pass recommendation. Did Alderwoman Howard speak to anyone about taking up her bill?
She didn't, I can do it. She did not.
Go right ahead then. Thank you. We'll now take up Board Bill 72.
Okay, Board Bill 72, it only pertains to her ward, the 14th ward, does the liquor moratorium, which some wards have. And I'm just reading through it as I go. I would just open it up for questions. It's a pretty normal.
It's the same as.
Yeah, it's the
right.
same one that, yeah.
Any questions from members of the committee? If not, we can entertain a motion. There's a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to pass Board Bill 72 out with a due pass recommendation. Any discussion on the motion?
Previous roll.
Been request for previous roll. Any opposition to previous roll? Seeing none by your vote, we have adopted Board Bill 72 with a due pass recommendation. That takes care of all of the board bills in the committee hearing today. We also had scheduled to have a brief discussion about the Civilian Review Board, Oversight Board process. Just wanted to clarify a few things in relationship to it. I issued another memo. One of the points is that all the people can really recommend as many individuals as we want. The ordinance does not limit you to one individual to recommend to the mayor. As you know, the process has it that the Board of Aldermen recommends names to the mayor goes through those and nominates 7 names back to the Board of Aldermen. And then through the Public Safety Committee, hearings are held on those recommendations. And then the board either confirms or not confirms individuals. If through the committee there's not a confirmation or not a confirmation through the Board of Aldermen, then new individuals are selected or nominated back to the Board of Aldermen from the mayor's office until such time as all 7 slots are filled. And you know there is 1 individual per district, and there are 4 wards in a district. So the memo just attempts to really clarify that. Also, the aldermen could use whatever process we would like in our wards to make selection of individuals. I also attached to the memo the city's application that's usually used for individuals when they are applying or being considered for boards or commissions. And that application has been modified for the Civilian Oversight Board. You could use that. You could create your own application. You don't have to have an application in making your own recommendations. Each alderperson can make that determination on their own. The alderpeople in a district, the 4 alderpeople could get together and jointly make recommendations, or you could do it individually. And that's determined by those individuals or those alderpeople in those districts. But one of the major things I wanted to clarify is that the ordinance does not limit alderpeople on the amount of individuals that we can recommend for the COB board. The question before us, if anyone wants to go further in that discussion or have any recommendations, is there any type of recommendation that we would like to make to other alderpeople from the Public Safety Committee on a process that alderpeople might want to consider using? Alderwoman,
Or Kara.
will come.
I mean, Kara and I have both been, and I believe Shane as well, has attended some of the CAPCAR meetings and has been working with their application process. And what that group had been doing is basically fielding some applications and putting it with a rubric and then bringing it back and kind of explaining to us as aldermen what applications they got, how people were rated in that process, how they, and making some recommendations, and we can take or not take their recommendations, because anybody who applies, all of those will be taken to us. So I know previously, I had put that application out there before seeing this one that came out of the mayor's office, which I will admit I have some pretty big concerns with some of the questions that are being asked on this application. Some of them are contrary to discussions that we had in committee about social media and things like that we chose to not put into the bill, and also concerns about just kind of the loadedness of some of these questions. If there's not a rubric that goes with this, how does, if you're back on child support, how does that impact your ability to be on that, and should it? When the bill, the only thing, if I'm correct, the only thing that precludes you is having a felony.
Right.
But now we're adding other things in there, like bankruptcy of not just your personal bankruptcy, but of a business you could have owned, which, many of us know a lot of developers, that's what they do. They fold one LLC, they open another. And so are we putting unfair and unrealistic limitations by using this? So my concern is, even if we don't use this, if this is what the mayor's office is using, it's severely going to limit some of the people that we as aldermen may want to put out in that process. So.
Alderwoman, did you have were you completed? Okay, thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a couple of questions, I do have questions about this, but going back about the memo and just kind of the process in general.
Okay.
Will the applications, regardless of what we choose as aldermen to use,
Right.
will they also be presented to the mayor when our recommendations are presented?
The ordinance does not require you to do that. All it requires is that the clerk submit the names that all the people have selected.
And will there be an opportunity to support why an individual is chosen by an alderman? For example, the application or any sort of recommendation?
If I understand your question correctly, are you saying is there any process for all the people to have to indicate why they've selected that individual?
Correct.
No,
Yes.
the ordinance doesn't require it. Now, an alderperson, if they wanted to put that with their recommendation, their reasons, they could,
Okay.
but it's not a requirement of the ordinance.
Does the applicant, so as an alderman of the 20th Ward and the district of 4 wards that are together, do my recommended applicants need to, be for the district, or can I recommend somebody to represent a different district?
You would recommend out of your specific district. Now,
In
if
my
you wanted
district
to-
only?
Yeah, all the people in that district can recommend people for their district. Now, if you want to recommend someone else in another district, someone from that district would have to make that recommendation.
Okay.
From my remembrance how the ordinance reads.
Yes.
We actually had a discussion
what
at one of the meetings.
So the question, I guess, is twofold. So if I were to recommend somebody for my district, do they have to, live in the district?
Yes.
Can I recommend somebody from a different district under any?
Or your district?
For that district?
For clarity's sake, let's use ward and district. The districts are the
Right,
ones
for the-
created for the Civilian Oversight Board. Can I, for the District 4, which includes the 7th Ward, can I recommend someone who resides in the 9th Ward, which is also in the same district? I think that's
your
the question.
Well, that's one question, yes. No, I mean,
That
I
wasn't a
understand I
question, just
can
ask.
do that. That was answered.
Can you? Oh, you can.
Right?
Yes,
Yes.
you can do that.
Okay, I didn't know you realized that. Okay.
So,
Good to know.
I think that was my attempt for the first question, but thank you for clarifying, Alderman Coder. So,
She did.
then, so I can recommend somebody who resides in the district, but not necessarily in my ward.
Yes.
And then the second follow-up question would be, can I recommend somebody, if I'm representing and I am representing Ward 20, District 6, can I make a recommendation for someone in District 5 or a different district? So, for example, make recommendations across multiple districts. Is there anything in the ordinance guiding an alderman to stick to their district and their recommendations?
I believe, and I don't have the ordinance in front of me, and I should have. You could look it up, but I believe it
believe
says
so.
that the aldermen are to recommend individuals from their district.
In their district only?
Yes.
Okay. Because I think some members of the community are confused about that, and it would be helpful to inform them that an alderman can only make a recommendation for somebody from within their district, and it is inappropriate to do otherwise.
Right.
Okay. So,
The sponsor, do you concur?
I agree.
On the opposite.
I think the way the ordinance is written is that aldermen can only make recommendations about the district that they are in. Now, they can make a recommendation of someone who doesn't live in that ward, but does live in that 4-ward district. But I think aldermen's influence is only in their district. Now, ultimately, though, these are just recommendations, and the mayor, according to the ordinance, can really select who he wants. He doesn't have to pick from your recommendations. And so then the follow-up question is that, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, have you talked to the mayor's office? While this application is not required in any way or mentioned in any way in the ordinance, being that the ordinance provides that the mayor ultimately makes the appointment, is this what he is relying on then? So he is requiring this for his appointment?
From my understanding, yes.
Okay.
Now,
Yes.
Patrick's here. Maybe you could speak to it. You come up here. I don't know, were you here to hear a few concerns about some of the questions on the...
Let's hear him, I'll get my notebook.
Okay. then.
Thanks for the opportunity. To answer Alderman French's question, the mayor is requiring that anyone that will be considered by the mayor's office to complete that application. But to respond to Alderwoman Green's concerns, we're not necessarily using that information to weed people out. Our intent is to have these applications filled out, have a full scope of who these individuals are, and then we're going to turn those applications back over to you and say, hey, this person applied from the 15th Ward. Do you know them? Would you recommend them? So any application we get, we're sending it right back to you guys. I have maybe 15 currently, just kind of waiting for that influx of applications to slow, and then I'll be sending every single one out to the board.
Can you tell me the rationale behind asking some of these questions, particularly relating to, bankruptcies and child support and potential, I guess low-level, wouldn't classify bankruptcy as a crime, but things that were not, nowhere in the ordinance did we say, you couldn't, right, it could be misconstrued as, being against somebody's character. So what was the rationale of including questions like that?
Generally, I think, again, it was to provide a broad perspective on who these individuals are, the level of responsibility that they have for their personal affairs, the types of involvement they have in the community, the types of businesses or professions that they've held, whether or not they pay their taxes, whether or not they pay their child support, which is illegal. If you don't pay your child support, you can be classified a felon for not paying your child support. We have a standard application. All those questions aren't asked, but we've, for a while now, wanted to have a deeper dive with that application. And so we really looked at what the governor's office uses for its boards and commissions, and it's an 11-page application that asks very pointed, personal questions to get a better perspective of who might be applying for these positions. Again, not to necessarily weed them out. If someone says they have not paid their taxes, which I'm not certain if it's required in the bill that you would need to pay your taxes, but at this point in time, on the other application, we run a criminal background and a tax check on anyone that we suggest to be appointed to any other board, whether that's the History Museum or the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Board. We run those checks, and if you've not paid your taxes, the mayor will not appoint you, and he will ask that you handle that, and then he would reconsider your nomination. So it's really, those questions aren't to necessarily weed people out, but it is to have an understanding of who individuals are. And again, we're going to be sending all that information to you, and ultimately ask that you make that suggestion to us.
So the other question I have is with the social media accounts and turning over all, the names or that you have access to and all of that. We debated that as a committee. That was an amendment that was put forth by the Police Officers Association, and we voted that down. And so now it seems like that is are people, I guess what I'm getting at is, are people who are on this no longer have free speech?
No, not at all. I think any individual under the Constitution is able to say the things that they want to say. I sometimes feel that those commentary can have consequences on your ability to do certain things. And one of the requirements actually of this board is that you be a fair and impartial person. And if you are published or you have a history of commentary that wouldn't lead one to believe that you can be a fair and balanced individual, I think that's important for you and the mayor and the rest of the Board of Aldermen to know. So that's why that question's there. It's something that, as I understand it, officers now have that requirement. They have to identify their social media accounts with the police department. But also you mentioned that this was something proposed by the Police Officers Association and was voted down. The rubric was also an amendment that was offered, and that was voted down. However, CAPCAR, I believe, is using that as a way to vet individuals and make recommendations to the members of the Board of Aldermen. So, yes, there are requirements within the board that are very specific and are, by ordinance required. But I don't think that ordinance limits the types of questions we can ask of people. There's just very specific instances where you might be eliminated, and that being a felon or, being married to a police officer, or whatever those requirements are.
Just seems like there's a lot of gray area there. I mean, what if you share a lot of information, you share a lot of news articles about police-involved shootings? Does that, then when you log in, when somebody monitors your social media account, do you assume that they have a bias because they may not have even, posed an opinion, but they've shared those articles?
I think it's safe to say that we're not going to assume anything just based upon the information people provide in the application. And I think it's very important that anyone who applies gets the opportunity to explain anything that they have in their application and answer questions. We tried to provide a few lines to explain anything that we thought might prompt more conversation. And then we also asked if you had any further detail you'd like to attach, please do so. But anyone that we get, we're going to touch base with. We expect that the Board of Aldermen, once receiving these applications, if you're going to nominate someone, you would also touch base with them. And then my understanding is anyone that we send over, any slate we send, that's going to be debated within this room before this committee, and you guys are going to be asking tough questions. So I don't think that anything that's initially on that application, outside of course, the few instances where you would be excluded due to the content of the ordinance, the requirements within the ordinance. Anything else I don't think is necessarily going to either get you a nomination or disqualify you from receiving one.
And by when can we expect to have the ones that have been turned into your office?
I can scan them in and send them out immediately. I was just more or less waiting to see if I could, see if it would, things would slow down with incoming applications, and I think I received 2 yesterday, and I don't know that I've received any today, so I'm happy to send those over ASAP.
Alderman Vaccaro had his hand up first.
Yeah, just
and then to-
it's more of a quick question. So I think, if I understood from the chairman, we can sort of make our own application, but what it seems like I'm understanding is this is the application and it's the only one they're going to accept. So if
we will
make,
accept.
if we draw up our own and add stuff or take stuff out, then it's going to circumvent what you...
It won't circumvent anything that you send to me. I will, or anyone in the office, I will use that as just an attachment to that application. But if you send me John Smith, I presume you'll provide contact information for that person. I will contact them and ask them to fill out that application if they've not done so.
But it's this application that has to be filled out, this
Correct.
particular one, not a homemade one or anything else.
Correct. I mean, they can, and we've said that to CAPCAR as well. The more information, the better, is my understanding. I think it does everyone a service in St. Louis to know who the people are that will be nominated to this board. It's a very important board, and I don't think an excess of information is going to be a bad thing for anyone.
Just to correct that a little bit, this is the application that the mayor wants filled out for the mayor to make his nominations back to the Board of Aldermen.
Right.
It is not something that has to be done from this end of it in terms of the Board of Aldermen. We can create our own and not use one at all.
Well, I
as
understand,
individuals'
but
offices.
it seems to me that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that this is the form that he's going to consider, so this will be the form that at the end of the day they have to fill out. We can make up our own form, but even if we do, if they don't fill this form out, this is the form that he's going to consider. Am I right, or, I mean?
Correct.
So it'd be useless for us to make a form other than just saying, fill this form out.
I think for your own purposes, it could be useful if you're looking for certain information from folks from the 23rd Ward, you're more than welcome to ask that for your vetting purposes, and then
I'm fine with
send that
this
to us.
form,
Okay.
but it seems like other people would like to see some stuff eliminated out of the form. I'm fine with the form. I just want to make it so it's clear in my mind, this is what I'm going to send out and say this is what's required. So I just want to make sure clear in my mind. So even if we make up our own form, it's my understanding that they'll just get a phone call saying, fill this form out.
Yes, please.
Okay, thanks.
Alderman Cohen, you had a question, comment?
I just was curious. I had a constituent that reached out to me and already had a copy of the mayor's application. So I'm assuming that you guys have the mayor's office has posted this to the city's website.
Yes, June 5th, we released that application, which was the date of the effective date of the ordinance. So the mayor sent out a press release, and then we pushed it out online. I believe it's on the website. I'll double check to
I
make sure it
remember
is.
seeing the email. I'm just curious, are there instructions that they specifically have to reach out to their alderperson to get a recommendation?
There
Is that
was a-
included on the application?
There was a cover memo attached to the application, or that front page, which is more or less just verbiage. It suggests, it indicates that nominations must come from the alderman to the mayor's office. And while if you send the application directly to us, that's great, but we will be sending it to their, respective aldermen for their input.
And I guess my concern is that someone gets the application off the city's internet and fills it out, sends it into the mayor's office, didn't reach out to the alderman, didn't get a nomination, but, I mean, I know you say you only have 15 of them right now, but in a perfect world, if there were 100 flooding in.
I'll make every single one available to you.
Okay. And then I guess to Alderwoman Green's comments about the application and maybe being a little bit too, I guess maybe invasive. I don't really have a issue. I know that you guys want to have as much information as possible when making your, decisions in terms of who's going to be on this board. But I think even putting caveats around the questions that, this isn't necessarily going to affect your appointment.
Sure, no, that's a fair
That
point.
this is not required as part of, being a part of the board, but it's going to be used for informational purposes, during the selection process.
I'd be happy to look
so
at
that,
some
so
sort
that
of
people at least
clarification in that
understand
regard.
that it's not a pre-qualifier, that it's not going to exclude them from consideration, so that maybe they do actually feel, well, one, comfortable to complete the application, and then two, a little bit more at ease sharing the information with the office.
Sure, no, that is a point well taken. I don't want anyone to feel that the application is so ominous that they may not even apply. That was absolutely not the point. So if there's a way we can clarify that, I'm happy to do
I
it.
completely agree and understand it is a very important board, and, you want everyone, as much information as possible when making considerations for it. But I do think that some of those questions, could be misinterpreted, and, even possibly by future administrations, if they're looking at it and they haven't, familiarized themselves with conversations such as this, that, it's just automatically interpreted as, oh, they're, a felon, we're not going to allow them employment here, kind of a situation. Whereas, it's not precluding them or excluding them from, consideration. It's just, we want the information so that we can make an educated decision in terms of
Certainly.
who's going to be on the board.
Thank you very much.
So that, Alderwoman Spencer?
Sure. So I just, when you're going to be distributing the applications, will you be distributing all applications to all aldermen, or will the aldermen get the applications just for their ward or district?
So I'm open to suggestions, but my first thought would be to, if someone applied from the 20th ward, I would provide you as the 20th ward alderwoman that application. It might also make sense to, I'll back up a second. We're going to put these in buckets for districts, as Alderman Coder pointed out. And so I could also send that to every alderperson within the district so they know a full picture of what's from the district. I don't know how you feel about sending them across to the entire board, if you want that information, or if you, chairman seems to not want that information. So I'm happy to do whatever you would prefer, but my first thought was send it direct to the alderperson representing the individual, but I could even send it to the entire district if you prefer.
It's my feeling that since we will be recommending across the district that the aldermen from each district are aware of all applications. And furthermore, on that point, that we recommend to all aldermen on the board that all applications that they receive personally be shared across the district with the other aldermen, so that and recommend that we do host meetings for our district so we can sit down and meet and make that a formal request from the Board of Aldermen, so that there is some, there is some rationale for having that. And then also with regards to these applications, I'm concerned that they could become public in some way, and I'd like to make sure that we have some provisions to preventing any sensitive information that may be included in the applications from getting out, and that we recommend to all aldermen who receive these applications that they don't under any circumstance become public.
On if I may.
Yes.
On the form, it does state that this is a public document.
Oh, it is, they all are public then?
However, we will, if requested, these documents, we will redact any personal identifying information, such as the last four of a social, birth date, address, that sort of thing. Once the slate of 7 is submitted to the board, they then become a matter of public debate, because there's going to be hearing on these individuals, and I could be presumptuous, but my thought was that they may even be called down to testify before this committee. So we didn't want to give them a false sense of anonymity in this process. So we did identify, as we have on our other application, that it is public, but we will be very sensitive to their individual information if those documents are requested.
And just one more thought on regards to the application itself. I'm sure that the city did due diligence in looking at other applications from other cities, and it might help to understand the rationale behind some of the questions, looking at the applications from other cities and the kinds of questions they've asked. I personally haven't done that research, but
I did not personally do that research. The Director of Public Safety and the Deputy Director of Public Safety, along with the City Councilor, spent a significant amount of time drafting that ordinance. As I mentioned, we did look at Governor Nixon's application, which is rather lengthy for the state boards and commissions. And I know in part that application informed our Civilian Oversight Board application, but I'm not certain of specific city applications that may have been referenced.
Second, please. Okay. Alderwoman.
Regarding the privacy issues, I'm going to disagree a little bit. I think once somebody has been nominated from the board to the mayor's office, I think at that point in time it has to be public to protect the integrity of the process. I mean, if the public wants to know that we're really putting impartial people on this board, then they have to see the same information that we've seen, and seen our rationale for choosing those people, whether it be through submitting a letter of support with them or publishing a rubric or whatever. I think we owe it to the public for there to be some transparency in our decision-making process.
And I would just impart that we absolutely agree, and we look forward to this process. I think it's an exciting one. It's an opportunity for us to really do this correct and to give people a sense of satisfaction through this appointment process, and knowing that this is the best group that's going to represent the entire city. But we also want to make sure that we're sensitive to their personal information. And so while it is obviously important that broader citizens understand who's being put on this board, I don't know that it's necessarily important that they understand exactly where they live or when they were born or when last they were fired from a previous job, that sort of thing. You know, and we'll make sure that if we get a FOIA request again, we will have the city council review that, and whatever is most appropriate to redact, we will do so, but also maintain the integrity of the process.
to that same point, what I was kind of asking the question for was specific to some of these questions that Alderwoman Green called into question: back payments on child support, being charged with small crimes. These are things that could be embarrassing to people and might prohibit them from wanting to apply, which is, you know, some of the things I would hate to have made public, for somebody to even not want to apply because they didn't want anyone to know that perhaps 20 years ago they were charged with a crime and not convicted.
Agreed. And, as I said, I think we're going to take as delicate of an approach as possible. Again, if these applications are requested by media or another individual, we want to make sure and protect, people's privacy. So we will keep all of that in mind. But again, if an individual hasn't paid their child support, as someone whose father long did not pay child support, I don't know that this is a responsibility that I think that individual should be given. Paying child support is obviously a very important responsibility if you're going to bring a child into the world. It's also illegal to not pay your child support again. So I think that's something that we should consider, and as well as what people have said, and whether or not they've paid their taxes, or almost as important as if they have had a poor experience with a police officer, or if they feel like they can be an impartial party, or if they're related to a police officer. These are all things that can help us inform our decisions, get a better understanding of who these people are. Because the worst thing that I think that could happen is that an individual is appointed to this board and some revelation about them comes out in the media, whether that's pro-police or anti-police or whatever you want to call it. I think we want to avoid that. So the more complete picture we can have up front, I think the better off we will all be.
And if I
Alderman
may
Coleman,
as
yes.
well, I've been trying to also remind folks who have been interested in applying for this, whether it's through the CAPCR process or, through the application process that you all have outlined. This is a public board, and all of these folks are going to be open to any type of scrutiny, whether that's from, CAPCR, the police union, the media, et cetera. And I think that they need to be prepared for that as well. And, regardless of if it's on an application, it will likely end up coming out at some point in time. And so I think, as we all know, that this was a fairly contentious bill, getting passed out of the Board of Aldermen. I expect, when this board gets up and running, that the folks who are appointed are going to be coming underneath a bit of public scrutiny as a result of that. And if they're not able to handle that on an application process, they're probably not going to be able to handle that on the committee, commission, or on the board. So, and I've been very candid with folks, who have reached out to me, who have expressed an interest in this, that it's just something that they should be mindful of. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully it doesn't occur. And obviously want to support my own constituency to be represented on this board, but if they do have concerns around completing an application to that extent, then it is something, it's just a piece of data for them to consider as well, in terms of whether or not they're willing to serve.
Alderman French.
Yeah, I had some questions just about the process that's going to happen in room 200. So how are you guys filtering these? Is this going to be left, is the mayor alone going to make these decisions? Do you guys have a committee of some sort?
We've not formed an official committee of sorts, but I think as an office, along with the mayor and Mary Ellen, maybe the Department of Public Safety, the director, take a look at these applications, and once again the board submits names to us. First and foremost, I should say that once we receive applications, and we've gotten maybe 12, 15 or so, estimating, I'm sending all those back to you guys, and we're going to ask that you take a look and you provide recommendations. Now, if there's an individual that the mayor feels strongly about, as you pointed out, Alderman, the ordinance does not preclude him from being able to nominate that individual, but again, that has to be confirmed by the board. So I think anyone that did not come from the board would come back to you with quite a bit of explanation as to why the mayor feels that this individual is qualified for this position. So I see this as more of a conversation that, yes, we're going to have applications, we'll review them, but we're also going to be relying on the nominations from the Board of Aldermen and making those, heavily relying on those nominations to make our determination.
Well, one of the reasons I'm asking about the process is on the application, the one question that really stood out to me here is please describe your experiences, good or bad, with police officers. Will there be any effort to filter people who have had negative experiences with police officers?
In so much as it's a data point to maybe, to perhaps understand how they might approach their role with the Civilian Oversight Board. I've had negative experiences with the police officers, but I feel that I can be if I were an individual citizen, I think I could be an impartial person on this board. So I don't feel that a negative experience would preclude anyone, and I don't think a positive experience would necessarily assure them a seat either. Again, I just feel like these are data points for us to better understand in a comprehensive way, comprehensive as possible, how these individuals might approach their role as a commissioner of this Civilian Oversight Board.
So if somebody lists a tragic, maybe even violent encounter they've had with a police officer, is the mayor's office going to eliminate them from consideration because you think that would be prejudicial?
No. And again, we'll send that, if that is a 21st Ward resident, we will send that application to you, and if you nominate that person, we will look at them as unbiased as we would any other application. And if someone says, I love cops, cops never do anything wrong, that's not going to preclude them again, per se, but it is important. I think the citizens of St. Louis are expecting us to have a full picture of who we're going to put up for this board. So again, it's just a piece of data for us to better understand that individual. Doesn't exclude or include them necessarily.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Green, you had another?
One more thing. So I want to second what Alderman Cohn said earlier in having some kind of thing that said that, answering these questions does not preclude you from this. I mean, I'll use myself an example. I had a boyfriend who sued me for our dog 11 years ago. So, I mean,
Okay.
I would have had a civil judgment put against me.
Did you keep the
And
dog?
I did end up getting ownership of that dog. So most expensive thing I've ever done to get a dog, but I did. And, but I mean, there's all sorts of reasons that somebody could have civil litigation against them. And so I'm wondering, what was the rationale behind saying filed against you versus
So
actually being judged against you,
I did not write that. I would have to ask the city councilor the verbiage, and maybe it was intentional, maybe it was not. I just don't know. And as I'm not a lawyer, I'm not sure what the differentiation is there. I mean, obviously, being accused of something, convicted of something is different.
Right.
And we want to be cognizant of not just because you're arrested, it didn't mean you actually broke the law.
Correct.
And I think we've seen that over time. And at one point in time, everyone got arrested seemingly, and it wasn't a big deal as long as you weren't convicted. So we're not going to be using that information as a filter per se. But I can ask the city councilor
Okay.
what the
I just think it's
rationale was.
important to have some kind of caveat that is published with this to say, that it
Sure.
answering yes to any of these does not preclude you. It's simply to gather information and get a holistic picture, because I equate it to the ban the box.
Sure.
And having the same kind of connotation to a lot of people, and that just really concerns me that basically anybody looking at this in all of these different ways, basically somebody could look at this and be like, you know what, anybody who's ever had any experience with the criminal justice system would be disqualified because they'd answer yes to one of these. And so it could be a disincentive for somebody who has had experience within the criminal justice system. And I do think that that's an important, viewpoint to have represented. We want people who actually have some understanding of our criminal justice system on this and aren't coming just with a complete blank slate. And so will we be omitting people that that have that, experience? And I'm not expecting an answer to that question, but it's just something to think about.
Well, I agree with you. Actually, I think it is important that we have a variety and a diversity of appointees. And so I think it's important to have someone that's had poor experiences with police. I think it's important to have individuals that have had positive experiences with police, because we're talking about a spectrum, and we're talking about individual instances. I think every single incident that may be reviewed by this board will be taken as an individual episodic incident, and not necessarily indicative of one another. And so in order to judge those situations well, I think you have to have a diverse committee membership. And so that point could be a positive point. Have you had any experience in these areas? I think as one might view them as a negative, someone else could view them as a positive, because those could, better inform their decisions as a member of this board.
Alderman Green, I had a question. Do you want to see that kind of statement on that section of the application itself? Or
Yes.
We can do that.
something? You can do that?
Yeah.
Did you get the kind of language that you used?
I will. I'll take a look at the application, and if it's the will of the chair, I can send that out. And if it's good, we can kind of resend an application out and change the one online.
Yeah, would you do it that way? I appreciate it.
I can even send information back to the individuals who've completed applications and saying, hey, just as a point of clarity, these individual questions will not guarantee or disqualify you from consideration.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Green, aren't you also using, you had recommended a rubric earlier that didn't pass the committee.
Correct.
You have that electronically?
I do.
It might be still worth sharing with other older people who might want to use that in their own personal consideration of individuals. It might be, informative.
And one of the things, I could do as well is kind of modify it for these types of questions too, because again, it's all in how you interpret these questions and how you evaluate these questions. And that's why I like rubrics, because then you know what the expectation is behind that question, and what the evaluator is looking for, rather than making an assumption about what that question means and what the evaluators look
Alderman
for.
French?
Yeah, I want to ask Alderwoman Green, are the other wards in District 6 using that?
Yes,
So everybody's using the same process in your district? That helps.
except we're not sure
you doing?
about Alderwoman Howard.
Yes, we're not sure about Alderwoman Howard. And I am open to really any application. I'm not, personally.
We've all met with, CAPCAR has met with all of us, or invited all of us in and gone through kind of what their process has been and got us all kind of on the same page.
Right.
So
We do have one application from the Coalition Against Police Crimes and Repression, and I'm uncertain. I can't remember if they actually filled out the city's application as well, but if they have not, I will reach out, ask them to fill it out, and again, attach the CAPCAR application to the back as additional information, because some of those questions are great. Again, it's just about providing a deeper set of data for individuals.
But I think it may be beneficial to share what you're using. It might be for older people. What I'm hearing from the committee is that we might want to clarify with other older people that you're not restricted to just recommending people from your ward, but you are from the district. I may send something out as a chair, just clarifying that as well. You had something, Alderman?
Yes, and maybe just helpful for the community in general to understand that. I think there's some basic misunderstanding there.
Right.
Might be helpful.
Yeah, we know this is the first time this is being done, and so we're building and creating all of these nuances as we go along and learning from the process. So certainly, I believe from this committee, we're going to have several conversations as this goes along, and we may see other bits and pieces of information that we want the rest of the aldermen to know, or all the people to know as we go along. So not that we're necessarily trying to inundate individuals with information, but certainly as much as we possibly can that could be helpful to all the people, other alder people, I think we should share. Is there any further discussion on this? We appreciate your being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. If I might ask one thing, if you're not going to ask individuals that you send to us to fill out the application, when we do get the names, it'll just expedite the process. If we do have thorough contact information for them, cell phone, email, mailing address, that way, if we get someone, we can immediately reach out to them and get the ball rolling.
In the memo we sent out earlier to members of the board, we did say that when you send in the names, have all that contact information as well. So,
thank you very much.
okay. If there's no other discussion on this matter, then our meeting is adjourned.
Chairman?
Oh, pardon me, Alderman. Yes, sir.
When is the cutoff date for submitting applications?
Yeah, come on. We can.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Just want to know exactly when you'll stop accepting applications for it to serve on the Civilian Review Board. Do you have a set date yet?
Yeah, we don't, the ordinance, well, we have to have the applications into the mayor's office on July 6th.
I see. Okay.
So as all the people, we could set our own deadline date when we want applications into us to give us enough time to go through it and make the recommendations to the mayor.
All right.
So,
and as far as the districts or clusters, whatever you want to call them, it's like I believe I'm in the 3rd district. So if I have John Smith and he doesn't live in the 3rd district in any of those wards, I can't submit him.
No.
That person
has to
live
come
in
from that district.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, very well. Thank you. That's all
Okay.
I had.
If there's no other questions or comments, then no one else I'm missing, then our meeting's adjourned. Thank you. All right.